So welcome to our annual meeting. First one, as far as I know, in the history of this club that we are doing over teleconference and phone. So welcome. This is a quick look at some of the items on our agenda today. We'll go over the election results, talk about a major gift we received, our mortgage status, and a few other things. Talk about a new thing that we're debuting called the Legacy Society. Progress updates on some major initiatives, how COVID-19 is affecting our operations and our 2020 goals. We'll be going over our finances as well, so you all can see that too. So Donovan Cordova, take it away. You are on mute, Donovan. Donovan, are you there? Let me just see if I can unmute you. Donovan? All right, stuck on mute. Well, Donovan I'll just go ahead with this. Donovan called me right before we got started just to give me the latest updates. Oh, computer frozen. Thank you, Donovan. Sorry. All right, I'll just go through this then. Donovan called me right before the start of this meeting and just shared with me the results. So we had, technically the ballot is open for another hour or so, but we've hit our voter threshold, which I believe according to the bylaws is 10%. We're at 25.8%. Voter turnout, which is great. And these are results. It was not a competitive election. Not a competitive election, but these are results.
My computer was frozen.
Sorry, Donovan, I was gonna steal your thunder, but go ahead.
No, sorry, y'all. My computer is frozen and slow on certain meetings. But Dan, yeah, continue. It was not a competitive election. Pretty simple. We actually had a great turnout. Over 25% of people voted off the platform. We sent out, well, I believe 460, 470 ballots through e-ballot. We literally put it together within the last week. Dan did most of the work, and 119 people voted, and everyone got elected. Over 100 votes for each person and for each office.
Jim Clark, I think you technically got more votes than I did. No, Jim and Kevin, I think you had the same number of votes and you both had more than I did. So I think this is a sign.
Well, as befits the Politburo.
Yeah. So you two fight it out. Anyway, Donovan, really appreciate all your work on this. Thank you so much. This is a really strong board. You know, mostly incumbents. I do want to take this moment to acknowledge Linda Shapley, who is dutifully taking notes of this meeting for all of her work for the past couple years on the board. Linda was served ably and wonderfully as my vice president. I leaned on her for all kinds of help and work, and we're really sad to see her go. But Linda, again, thank you so much for all of your efforts with the club these last few years. You're not totally going anywhere, but anything you'd like to say?
No, my office is, 4 blocks from the club. So once I'm actually back downtown, it'll be great. I can still be there and am happy to help out wherever I can. Great.
And welcoming Jim Hill, who some of you may have met last time on our candidates night. Jim is a digital editor at Colorado Public Radio, and we're really grateful to have Jim on board to step into we're really grateful to have Jim on board to step forward and fill some big shoes. Jim's going to help us a lot with our new website. So, and everybody else, huge thanks as well. Again, this is a very talented board, lots of accomplishments, all doing many things, all throughout the news industry, the communications field, and profession. So we can't be successful without a great board. As many of you who have served on this board before know, this is not a board that just sits back and does nothing. There's a lot of work involved. So we're grateful for their service. Okay, I want to announce a pretty big thing for this club. So in June, late club member Walter Boss donated $500,000 to the club. Walter was a longtime photojournalist for Rocky Mountain PBS and KMGH TV. This is a big deal. I checked with Alan Kanya, our historian. It is believed, based on all the documents that Alan has collected over the years, to be the largest bequest in club history. Walter was extraordinarily generous. I had a chance to correspond with Walter. Many of you may have known Walter, but I had a chance to correspond with Walter certainly over the phone, over email. I want to thank former President David Milstead and Roger Ogden, who Walter approached first about a year ago before his passing with this decision of his. And again, we're extraordinarily grateful for that. I can't tell you what a transformative thing this is for us. He had a few very simple requests for it. The first was the establishment of a scholarship in John Enslin's name. John, as you all well know, tragically passed away last August. And Walter's only request was that this scholarship have $1,000 donated to it annually from his gift to us. Part of that gift, the gift could be used to pay for the ceremony at which this scholarship was offered. We have taken the approach of naming our top scholarship at the Runyon after John Enslin. It was called the John C. Enslin Memorial Scholarship. Many of you have seen me message about this in the newsletter. We just finished going through the process of selection for that. And we've awarded those scholarships to the various students. Those gifts should be going out this week. There was another clause in that contract, in that bequest that said that the gift could be effectively used to ensure the stability and I'm paraphrasing here, of the club for the long term. So we worked with the estate's executor, and on February 21st, we used $231,586.16 of that gift to pay off the balance of our mortgage. Knowing that, Walter's generosity, of course, was tremendous here, we voted as a board in February that we would pay back the gift by pledging our monthly mortgage payment until we restore that $231,000. We have budgeted for that in this year's budget. It will take a little bit of time, of course, but our feeling was we would have rather saved the interest, on a mortgage that was, $1,700 or so a month. About nearly $1,000 of it was going towards mortgage interest. And it just we felt as a board that it made more sense to take those funds and invest it in us, invest it in the club, invest it in you, than be paying interest to somebody else. So the balance of the gift, which is roughly $270,000, is going to be invested in the Denver Foundation for Management. We don't pretend to be, financial managers here. We will be investing that money in an index fund pool. Thankfully, we did not go through with all the paperwork before the market took its, massive downturn over the last few months. So that money right now is sitting in our bank account. We're working through the paperwork right now to have the Denver Foundation Management. This fund will be separate from the John C. Enslin Memorial Scholarship Fund. We're going to be calling this the Denver Press Club Legacy Fund. Again, I can't emphasize enough just what a transformative gift this is. The club is in amazing financial shape. That is a check for $231,000 on February 21st. Tom Foutch, general manager to the right. Gary Billings to the left from Evergreen National Bank. So that's it. This mortgage has been there for, depending on who you ask, roughly 15 to 20 years or so. And so it's just a massive weight off our shoulders. Obviously, we got all this done before all the crisis and chaos. So what does this actually mean for us? It eliminated the club's largest liability. It safeguards what is arguably the club's most critical asset, our building. I already mentioned that means we're not paying interest to a third party. And it means that we can take those funds, a lot of funds, and direct that back into our mission. So it also sets us up to be able to seek additional grant funding and do so and show folks when we have to show them our financials that, you know, we don't have this huge mortgage, this huge debt sitting on our balance sheet. So all of these things are tremendously wonderful. I would encourage you, if you didn't know Walter, we have an obituary of him that we published a few months ago on our website. And there is a caricature of Walter that we commissioned a few months back that has also been hung on the wall. So I will stop there. And does anybody have any questions?
Congrats, that's huge news.
Thanks, Donovan. I think that was Donovan. Yeah, absolutely huge.
That's the best news in years and years.
Yep.
Congratulations.
You know, and again, I want to thank you know, Roger Ogden, Tom Foutch, and David Milstead for you know, speaking with Walter, working with Walter and his executor prior to his passing. Walter was incredibly generous. I can't sum up everything about who he was. John Wenzel wrote a really great obituary for us on the page, and I encourage you to go check it out. So, you know, related to that, you know, what does sort of all this mean? Well, it means that we have, you know, this really terrific, you know, gift in place, you know, that we can use to sort of build off of. And this has gone, we've gone through iterations of this, from my understanding, having talked to Alan and a few others, the Denver Press Club Legacy Society, or something like that, an endowment committee, a development committee, whatever it is. You know, we are seeking to raise a $5 million endowment. I don't pretend that that's going to necessarily be done, you know, in the next year, but it's a goal that we've talked about setting for ourselves. So we're seeking bequests from members. If you've designated us in your reel, please reach out to us and let us know. If you haven't, consider adding us. You know that we are committed to privacy about that. If you have any concerns about that. You know, our goal really with raising money like this is that it's going to allow us to expand our operations, program for journalists and media literacy, many other things about our mission that I'll talk about later, and secure our club's future for years to come. You know, obviously a year like this notwithstanding, you know, if you assume a 5%, you know, return on average every year off of an endowment like that, it's enough money to fund our operations, most of them for each year. And that's without, you know, factoring other things like event revenue, membership revenue, any of those other things. And so, you know, we're fortunate to have a really good group of people there, you know, of folks who are already a part of this committee. You know, Laura Frank, who's on our board, Warren and Terry Smith, who have a lot of experience in this area. And some others, Jim Clark, Tom Foutch, myself, and some others. And so, again, if this is something that you're interested in getting involved with, something you want to let us know about, you know, there's a section on our website called Planned Giving. It's under the donate button. You can always reach out to us personally and ask about this. But, you know, it's going to come, of course, from individuals, but it also could come from corporations as well. And like I said, we're working to establish this specifically with the Denver Foundation, which has, you know, deep roots in the community, is a good steward of money and management. There's all kinds of safeguards in place to ensure that, you know, that money stays secure. And so, you know, again, this is really about looking toward the future of the club. So with that, I will toss it over for some progress updates on a few other major initiatives. Jim Clark, do you want to go ahead and talk about construction? Thanks.
This past year, we were blessed, and I really do mean blessed, with a $200,000 grant from the State Historical Fund. I begged these people to give us this money because I told them they were going to lose the building, and I think they were going to lose the building. And they finally saw their way clear to giving us a maximum grant of $200,000. And then the Gates Family Foundation, just out of nowhere, said, okay, we'll make a contribution for half of your match, which was $35,000. The generosity we've been shown is, well, it gets me right in the feels, honestly. It's an indication that people recognize what a gem we have, what a treasure we have on our hands here that we're shepherding. So we're still about $20,000 short of the total match, but we've gone ahead with construction planning, with the documents being drawn up, with the plans on how to replace the roof and replace the HVAC system for the back of the second floor and the first floor. And the architects, the Hain architect firm in Evergreen, which is the premier firm in this line of work in Colorado, they tell me that we're on track even with the current unpleasantness. So we're probably going to start making sawdust in June, and they'll probably be done by mid-August. And we'll have a new roof that should, knock on wood, last until, well, until my children are really old, I hope. So that's the update.
Great. Thanks. One question, Jim. Sometimes, and understandably, we get questions about ADA access. I wonder if you might be able to share anything about that.
All right. So this is actually phase one of what I hope to be a 3-phase plan of 3 different grant rounds. Round 1 obviously is make sure the building isn't destroyed. That means roof, that means basic electrical work, and a few other little tweaks. Round 2 has to be ADA access. The Hain architectural firm has drawn out plans for what that looks like. And for us, it just means a very simple elevator to get people from the first floor to the second floor. And that is almost certainly going to be placed in the kitchen, in what's now the kitchen, and the entrance will be where the back door is now. There's lots of reasons for that, architectural and otherwise. The biggest reason is you have to have a shallow enough slope to bring wheelchairs down. And so that's along the back wall and then along the western wall of the building to an elevator lobby, and then a hydraulic lift up to the second floor where the pantry is now, where the ice machine is now, those kind of things. So we have a vision for that. I don't think it's actually going to cost $272,000 like the first round. I think it's going to be a little less than that. And I think there's grant opportunities beyond the State Historical Fund for that money. I think there are disability outfits that care about this kind of stuff. There are private donors who care about this kind of stuff. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to do at least 2 rounds. Round 3, I used to think it was about the exterior of the building. I'm not so sure now because we're about to have a hotel built right next to us, and I think that will protect the most vulnerable side of the building. So I'm not sure what round 3 looks like yet, but it's going to be some tweaks and some interior work for sure. So that's my vision.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Next, let's go to Kevin Vaughn. Kevin, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. As many of you know, the club has operated for a number of years as 2 distinct and separate entities. One is the Denver Press Club, which is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and the other is the Press Benevolent Association, which is essentially a going concern business, which was set up to operate the club's bar operation essentially, and at one time restaurant operation back when it had one. This setup was done several decades ago, and we began talking last year as a board about whether this kind of an arrangement still made sense. And Larry Rickman, one of our members, was able to convince the good folks at Ireland, Stapleton, Pasco, and Pryor to do some pro bono work for us on this subject. So that work is ongoing. But the discussion essentially is does it make the most sense to continue to operate this way where we have two separate entities, keeping separate books and all of those sorts of things, or whether they should be merged into a simple 501c3. And so that work is ongoing. I expect that we'll have some answers. I would have expected them this spring, given everything we're dealing with just as a society. I think it's more likely to be summer now. And since we're not paying the lawyers anything, I can't really crack the whip and tell them to get this stuff done. I think they sort of work on it as they have time. But we will have some answers this fiscal year, and it will, we'll make decisions based on the analysis done by the attorneys as to whether we stay with our current business model or whether we move into a single entity, which would be a 501c3 for all of our operations.
Great, thanks, Kevin.
And I'm happy if people have questions to answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Questions.
Anyone with questions, go ahead. All right.
Looks like there are none.
Okay. We'll open up another opportunity at the end for questions as well. So if you have any in the meantime, just save them and we'll get them at the end too. Okay. Next, we relaunched our website within the last few weeks on WordPress. We had been on a different platform for quite some time, at least 3 years now. We chose WordPress because it's a platform used by more than a third of all the world's websites. Much easier to post updates. A lot of people in communications and news are familiar with the platform. There's a lot of, it's an open source platform. There's a lot of development, so it's easier to post updates. We migrated over most of the older content as well. We actually do have an archive of it as well. One of the kind of consistent complaints we had about the website was that the events on Facebook and in our newsletter weren't necessarily reflected on the website, and we kind of just linked people to the website and said, here, go here. We have actually improved the events calendar. Of course, there's not really much in the way of events to showcase right now, but we did get a little bit of a dry run of that right before all the shutdown stuff. But that will be ready to go once we open again. We have in our budget, money for writers, mostly focused on students and emerging journalists to recap our events and add photographs. So we're going to, be looking to get more coverage of our events once we get going again as well. That will feed our newsletter, feed our site, and really just show folks, what we're about and what we've been doing. So we're also working on launching a new donation portal there, powered by a vendor called Mobile Cause. It's actually the same vendor that the investigative reporters and editors uses to allow for easy donating on phones, a little bit more friendly than just PayPal. So we're just in the process of getting that set up, and that should be going there shortly. We're paying a really reasonable platform fee to do that. And again, it's something we're going to be able to use once we have things like Hall of Fame and Runyon, and it's just a lot simpler, allows us to manage our donors a lot better instead of sort of ad hoc through email. So lots of really good things. I would not call the website done. It's in what I would consider a good enough or acceptable state to be able to launch, and we were eager to get that done while we had some downtime here with the coronavirus shutdowns. So any of that feedback, though, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got the keys to it and can make changes if we need to. So if you see mistakes, typos, whatever, just reach out to me at president@denverpressclub.org. Okay, let's talk about, speaking of coronavirus, how it is affecting our operations. Tom, are you there? Tom Foutch. Let me see if I can find you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
You hear me now?
I can.
Oh, okay. Well, the virus has literally put our entire operation on hold for the time being. We are subscribing to the governor's suspension of operations until April, although it looks more like May 11th. What we've done is a couple of things. One is we were requests to cancel or canceled. Every single one of the second half of March operations or events that we had scheduled, all of those in April and those in May, they either called us to cancel or we canceled them, or contacted them to see if they wanted to cancel. Those events that were on the docket, but not schedule dependent, all of those so far have said they are going to look at a way to schedule them later in the year. So even though it on paper looks like we lost everything in late March, April, and May, that may not be the case. So I'm hopeful on that front. Also with regard to operations, and this is the biggie, the payroll, of course, because it's our largest operating expense. I submitted a proposal to the board. They accepted half of it, but we're very generous with the other half. So the club is taking care of Jim and myself through May 11th. That said, a couple of days ago, as probably everyone's familiar with, the federal government implemented the Paycheck Protection Plan or program, and we are going to put an application in on that. What that does is it will compensate us, the plan. It's a loan at this point to the club for 2.5 months of payroll. Now, if we use the money that we are ultimately given expressly for payroll, the debt is forgiven and we don't owe that back. So I talked to the Bank of Denver, obviously our primary bank, and they don't do the Small Business Association loans, the SA loans. But they have a bank in California, so when they get that application, they send it through them. I really wasn't terribly comfortable with that for 2 reasons. One, the bank in California doesn't know us. Secondly, Bank of Denver, even though our accounts are with them, they're not the most efficient folks on the around. And there is a part of that PPP that suggests you go to your bank with whom you have a relationship. Well, we also have a relationship with Evergreen National Bank up in Evergreen. And obviously we just paid off the mortgage, but we still have accounts with them. Our home, our not home, but our equity line of credit is with them, our line of credit. And we still have a savings account up there. It was through that savings account that we paid the mortgage. So I finally got a hold of Gary Billings, actually this afternoon, late this afternoon, I got the call back. And they are a bank that generates SBA loans. And he is more than happy to help us with this process, which is a huge weight off our shoulders, particularly my shoulders, that I'll be able to deal with someone who I know well. And tomorrow morning, I'll be back in the club. I'll get the payroll documents that we need. I'll send them up to Evergreen and we'll get this thing underway. So I'll let everyone know how that pans out, but I would suspect that it looks good going into the future. So on behalf of myself and Jim, I can't tell you how grateful we are to this club and this leadership that you're treating us the way you are. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tom. I do want to just, note again, too, that, thanks for all your work, Tom and Jim, during this time. Just related to other operational things as affected by the coronavirus. As most of you know, the Runyon has, of course, been postponed. We are targeting Saturday, September 12th to honor Judy Woodruff. But, understandably, just given the lack of certainty in a lot of things right now, she and her executive producer are a little reluctant to fully commit at this point, but her assistant that we've been in touch with has it penciled on the calendar. I just don't think we're going to probably get a confirmation until we have a lot more clarity about really what this disease is doing to things like air travel and things like that. I'm optimistic that September 12th is enough. I don't think we're going to, of course, be fully back to anything that's like normal. Judy is, and the other challenge, of course, with this is that, the later we hold it in the year, the closer we get toward the election. And of course, Judy with her duties at PBS has quite a bit to do with that too. So we're trying to get it right after Labor Day, enough time to give us distance from this thing. Hopefully we'll see. If for some reason we can't hold Runyon, we will defer everything to 2021. and, honor all ticket and sponsorship purchase for that. We obviously don't want to do that. It's a, significant chunk of revenue for us. It wouldn't, it would hurt. It would not imperil us, but it would not be good either. So we're trying to do everything we can to ensure that happens. Just separately related to coronavirus, the program committee, I know we've been talking about scheduling events like this, a little less formal, for, webinars about, journalism activities, virtual happy hours, things like that, where people can get together and talk and try to build community again. So we'll be in touch with more of that as it comes up. So any questions about that?
One last thing on the operation, if I could, Dan.
Sure.
I think we're obligated to subscribe to what the mayor and the governor are telling us. That said, my intention is to open up as soon as possible, even if on a limited basis. We've got our Tuesday night losers, we've got the poker games. As soon as we can throttle up, we're going to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. Speaking of programming and events, Skylar, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Go ahead. Yep.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me, Skylar, here. I serve as co-chair of the programming committee. The big philosophy in programming for me has always been to have such diversity of events that we get diversity of audiences, because the club is its own best marketer, and as people come in, they are inclined to either come back or to join, or they're certainly aware of the special place that is the DPC Clubhouse. So I was lucky to work with Carol when she was programming chair. Carol really was a workhorse and it left impossible shoes to fill, but we've done our best. In 2019, as you see, we did 81 public and private events. Dan very smartly implemented a system whereby we ticket the public. If you are not a member, you should have to pay for the privilege of coming to the club. So many of those events were ticketed, which ended up raising not insignificant amount of revenue, not to mention what we raise off them buying drinks or perhaps getting a membership or certainly coming back to the club. We also brought in revenue from ticket sales, which goes to support targeted ads on Facebook and other club operations. So my philosophy with programming has been to diversify the events. So working hand in hand with Noelle Phillips, who's also heads up the programming committee, we've done some great journalism events, including a resume workshop she put on for aspiring journalism interns, discussions about what was going on with the airport and that's contractor issues in that are pressing in journalism, but also, we before this all started, relaunched the Vinyl Night, which is what got me coming to the club to begin with. So just continue to transform the club into a social space that has a primary emphasis on journalism, but also acknowledges that it's a space that people want to be.
Great. Thanks, Skylar. Any questions for Skylar? All right.
Good job.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I want to go through a little bit about our a board retreat that we held in November, if I'm remembering correctly. Seems like eons ago, probably because it was. And really just sort of deliver to all of you, the membership, sort of what came out of that that retreat, that day-long retreat. And specifically, what we sort of like step back from all the chaos. We've entered a much more stable period now, financially, mission-wise, and everything. We'll say, well, what is the press club all about, and what should we be aiming to do in the future? Thinking about who we are, leading up to the building's 100-year anniversary in 2025. What does that look like? And so, after a lot of workshopping and whiteboarding and everything, we came up with a vision statement that really, I think, goes to the heart of what we aim to do. Building engaged communities by promoting the pursuit of ethical journalism. Communities can be, communities within, the city of Denver, within Colorado, communities like the poker players who play at night, all of those things, but really, sort of wrapping ourselves around the focus of pursuing ethical journalism and what that looks like. So, diving a little bit deeper, what does the mission look like? what are the things that we want to do on kind of a day-to-day basis? We want to nurture the growth of aspiring journalists through our annual scholarship program, and really just generally nurture aspiring journalists. In general, they are, the future of our craft, our trade, our profession. We want to facilitate conversations about the issues of the day. There often are some of our most popular programs. We held a program earlier this year about, impeachment and Ukraine and, any number of things that Skylar and Noel put on with those many events. But those are often some of the most well-attended, particularly ones around media, journalism, and things like that. We want to, of course, provide a community and space for our members too. I mean, I think everybody agrees that's, one of our unique value propositions is that we have a space where people can actually gather. Offering professional development to journalists, students, and other communications professionals. So, whether it's, how to make effective maps or use Excel or, file a core request, we want to provide those opportunities. And again, whether those are full-time journalists, people who freelance, we want to, writers, reporters, photographers, videographers, whoever they may be, we want to reach those folks. And then lastly, and I think this is, of course, really important, we know how much the profession is, under attack in a lot of cases. We want to help the public understand the world around them and, understand who it is and who we are and what we do. Diving in a little bit more towards some of our organizational goals for 2020, of course, we want to continue all those things that are described in our mission, but, we mentioned some of these things already, but really we want to create a sustainable mechanism for our scholarship program. We've, done that through establishing the Ensign Memorial Scholarship Fund earlier this year in the wake of John's passing. That, again, already exists with the Denver Foundation. We've traditionally funded that through our ticket sales from Runyon. And by partnering with the Denver Foundation, we're, very much, looking forward to working with them, continue to work with them. And it provides a mechanism, again, for people to donate directly to the Denver Foundation, designate the name of that fund, and grow that. Our goal, I think, long-term would be to get that fund to $100,000 right now. And again, it's your donations and requests that help us do that. We have already actually gone and appointed a new scholarship co-chair. And so that part is done. So these were goals that we set back in November, and we've already started to tick some of those off of our list. As Kevin sort of detailed, we have already begun to look at the formal business structure and really what makes sense as the optimal business structure for us. And I should mention too, I forgot it, but the new scholarship co-chair helping Jerome Ryden is Sarah Crocker, who unfortunately just left us from Denver to relocate to Phoenix. But the good news is with the miracles of technology, she can continue to help with that even from afar. Building improvements, which Jim Clark already walked through. I think, another big thing that we haven't talked about is building out key committees. Membership is a big one. And one of the things that we want to do is get 500 dues current members by the end of 2020. We're a little short of that right now. Many of you should have received your dues. So if you haven't, please check your email. If you have any questions, just reach out to membership@denverpressclub.org and we can get you set up. The establishment and building out of the legacy committee, which we already talked about at the beginning of this. Obviously, programming for Skylar and Noel is absolutely critical. It feeds our mission. It brings new people in, and it provides a value to our members. Bylaws, we're not going to be taking any votes tonight on changes to the bylaws. Frankly, just with all the chaos of coronavirus, we kind of just ran out of time to establish all that. But just reestablishing that and making sure that we're doing everything we can. We have posted the bylaws, by the way, on our new website. It's under our About section. So if you are curious and you have lots of time and you want to read through all of them, they are posted there. And then the last thing that we really want to do, again, to just sort of shore up our pillar events, is establish a committee for major events with key roles, people who are in charge of venue coordination, sales, marketing, programming, and things like that. Our Hall of Fame and our Runyon Award are our two biggest events. Of course, the Runyon being the biggest and one that delivers a lot of profit for us. It's a event that last year generated about $43,000 in funds for the club after expenses. This year was looking to track about $30,000 after expenses. So for a number of reasons, of course, this is really important, and we need to have separate committees that are focused on actually executing on these events. And then, develop our first formal budget for approval by the fiscal year. And so these were organizational goals that came out of our board retreat in November. I'm pleased that many of them are well on their way to happening, and many of them I can actually say formally we've checked off and done. I know it doesn't sound like particularly exciting and sexy in all cases, but it is something that's going to help us, manage an effective organization and achieve what we want to and provide value to our members. So speaking of finances, let's talk about that. 2019 financial highlights. I will just sort of walk through what some of these numbers mean, and then Kevin, I'll ask if you want to add anything as well to this. As Kevin already noted, we have two organizations, the Denver Press Club, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, and the PBA, which is a C Corp. The bar, other things like that, the rental income that we get from our in-house caterer and stuff like that, all is on that side of the house. Total income from the press club, I do want to note here that of course that some of this is of course skewed by the fact that we received a $500,000 donation from Walter Boss, and so that's why that $757,000 is so large. I do have an actual sheet, I didn't include it in this presentation, that looks at what our organizational profit and loss is over the last 11 years. We just wrapped up the fiscal year at the end of February, so we just got numbers about a week ago that shows everything. COGS, for those of you, I didn't know what that word meant, I think up until a year ago, but that's just cost of goods sold. What does it cost to actually deliver the stuff that we're giving to you? So that's to actually generate that income. So our gross profit on the press club side, just over $700,000 with $56,000 of expenses. So net income of $651,000. On the other side of the house, the Press Benevolent Association, again, this is bar rental. If Tom rents it out to a community group that wants to use the upstairs for the meeting, all that is income that is put here. Somebody wants to rent the club for prom or a wedding or something, all that is on this side of the house. When we had a restaurant that we were regularly using, like all this was on this side of the Press Benevolent Association. So income, COGS, gross profit, you can see that we operated a loss. This has been true for years and years and years and years. We get a lot of questions about, how is it that we can, get, more permanent food service back? Like you can see that we already operate at a loss. It's one of the big reasons that we're looking at whether we can just, merge these two things together. Is there enough wiggle room, given all that we want to accomplish and do, that we can effectively do this all under a nonprofit? Turns out a nonprofit can own a liquor license now. I don't think that was the case when this was first formed. We're looking at that. But overall for fiscal 19, an organizational profit of $593,127.95. Now you may think like, wow, great. You never need to pay membership dues ever again. Isn't that wonderful? Wrong. We have about $442,000 in cash on hand at the moment. But 371,000 of that is restricted. So by restricted, I mean, some of that is money from the State Historical Fund, for instance, that we can't, we can't just go use the $54,000 that the State Historical Fund, to redo the bar, like that's reserved for the Ruth. So if you exclude the Boss gift, the restricted donations from the Gates Foundation, the State Historical Fund, we actually had an income of $474.27 for the entire organization, which is fine. We always talk about how the goal should be to have one more dollar than we brought in, which is what we did. Again, all of that other stuff is really meant for other things. And so it doesn't mean that we can't, but, when you look at that, that's how things end up. One thing that we did do from a financial standpoint is we upped the number of scholarship awards this year from 7 Colorado universities and colleges to 9, which drove our scholarship awards up to $15,000. It is, again, I think close, if not the most in scholarship money we've ever given out in a single year. It's a little tough to find those records, but as I mentioned, we're paying that out this week. The other thing too is that, we haven't incurred too much in the way of running expenses. So that's just another thing to sort of be focused on. We don't have that in yet when we think about just the total cash on hand here as well. And yet we've collected most of our revenue from ticket sales and things like that as well. So Kevin Vaughn, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go to fiscal 20 budget?
No, I mean, I think the point is, and we'll get into this a little more in the budget. The point is that for the last few years, the club has been in the black at the end of the year each year, but there was some circumstances that led to that maybe didn't paint a full picture. For example, all the work that was done by Ann Imsey when she was treasurer to get us exempted from property taxes led to a $54,000 rebate from the city. So, that went right into our bank account and helped offset expenses and stuff, but that wasn't really a true gauge of income. That was sort of a one-time influx of cash. And the same reality here, we've got 70, in my mind, we've got 70 some odd $1,000 in the bank right now. Because all of the restricted cash, as Dan said, is earmarked for, it's either state historical fund money that's going to the new roof and the other improvements that are happening this year, or it's Walter Boss's gift that's going to be sent to the Denver Foundation very soon and invested to start growing for future years. It's not money that we can just use for operations or expenses that come up. So, we've had a healthy bank balance this past year. Even the $71,000 is a little bit skewed because it's got, as Dan pointed out, ticket sales money is in there from the Runyon, but we haven't yet paid for like the venue and bought the plane tickets to get our guest here and those sorts of things. So, we've been going in the right direction for a few years. We'll go into the budget now, and I think this marks another step toward what I would say is financial security. We've had a budget the last couple of years that was sort of loosey-goosey. I mean, we had numbers on a piece of paper, but this year we set about to really do a detailed line item budget and be realistic about both revenues and expenses in every area. And we approved that final approve at our February meeting. So, like I said, we have a budget that spells out what we think is a realistic look at our expenses and revenues for this current fiscal year, which started March 1st and goes through the end of February next year.
Yeah, and thanks, Kevin. And just I don't know if you want to go through any of these specific budget highlights right now. Can you see the screen?
I can.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're going to, as this notes, we're going to deposit $175,000 of Walter Boss's gift fairly soon. We're going to hold back $100,000 of that because we don't know the full COVID-19 impact. I mean, we haven't had any operations or revenue for, we're coming up on, more than 3 weeks now, and probably won't for another 6 weeks at least. So we're going to hold some of that back for that emergency. But our budget is, I think it is realistic. We did project increases in income from the Hall of Fame, increases in donations, increases in revenue, which we would make almost completely by getting to 500 dues paying members this fiscal year, which is the goal we set at our retreat. And I think it's a worthy goal, but one we can meet. And, and I think sort of some of Dan's talk about wanting to have more robust committees that will work on various issues at the club. One of them will be fundraising, and particularly legacy fundraising, which won't figure into the annual budget. That'll be an endowment, but eventually that will provide income that will play into our budget. Here's a spreadsheet of sort of the fiscal year budget for the two organizations. We can get into more detail in specific areas, but we basically looked back at what our operations have been and what was realistic. And then in terms of some of the revenue points, like I mentioned, we talked about what would be a goal that would be a stretch, but one that we could do, and that's how we came up with those numbers.
Yeah, and one thing I should just note quickly is that the difference between the 513 here, that's just a typo on my part. This should say 513. So
Okay.
if you eagle-eyed people, that's why. We do have a more detailed budget than this. This is just a very high-level budget that really breaks down every, income and expense category. So I just, rather than show you the whole thing because it's a long spreadsheet, this is what it looks like from a combined organizational standpoint.
And the full budget's available for any member to look at.
Yep.
Any time. So if anybody's curious, let us know. It's available for your inspection.
Great.
Dan-
Thank you. Go
Dan,
ahead.
can I
Question?
say one thing?
Mhm.
I just want to chime in on the second half of March, all of April, and probably all of May are going to be shot all to pieces. So this budget, as detailed as it is, and as many hours as Kevin, Dan, and I, and Roger and others have put into it, Jim, it's gonna look ugly for at least a quarter, if not perhaps a little bit more. It doesn't mean we can still hit the rest of the year. That's what we're going to strive to do. But at the end of the year, when numbers are what they are, we need to be mindful of the fact that the first quarter of 2020's fiscal year is going to be a little off the mark. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and you can see like just in these net income lines down here, like March, 29,000. Like, what is that from? That's all Runyon stuff. Down in the summer, like we traditionally don't have events, so things like rentals and memberships, of course, help with that. Picking back up again for Hall of Fame and some other things like that, and then picking up again around, the holidays. So, but yeah, we built this budget, 2 months ago, 3 months ago or so.
Yeah.
To say the least, a couple things have changed. So
We built it in a pre-COVID world.
yes, to say the least. So I know many of you and your, organizations are probably going through similar things. We are, of course, not immune. It's why we point out that, membership is so important. It really helps our cash flow. It's 20% of our overall revenue in the FY20 budget anyway. And so anything that you all can do, getting more members to come in, it does make an impact, particularly right now while we're shut down. Kevin, anything else?
I don't think so. I'm happy to answer questions if people have them.
Great. All right. Well, hearing none, we'll go ahead. Just a couple key dates and milestones for this year, and we're almost wrapped up. Today is our annual membership meeting. Our new board is elected. One of the things I mentioned recently in a newsletter is that I will be serving what is ultimately a partial term. And the reason for that is that I'm going to be entering an MBA program here. As with so many things in life right now, it has been delayed all the way back to mid-August for coronavirus reasons. So I would expect a transition. The plan is to have Kevin take over, Kevin has served very ably and wonderfully as our treasurer for the last year plus, is going to step in and take over as president, on or about, September 1st. So, obviously that could potentially change again, but that almost actually brings me up all the way to a full 2 years. I actually ended up taking over in October 2018. I'm term limited anyway. This would have been the last term I could run according to the bylaws. I can't run for more than 2 full terms. Kevin's done a wonderful job, and I have no doubt that he will continue to do so as president. And of course, we've got a really capable and wonderful board to, keep the mission going. So I won't be gone, but I will be needing to step back because with school, what it is, and still having a full-time job, I'll still be based in Denver, but it's just going to take a lot. So that's what the expected timeline is. As I already mentioned, the tentative rescheduled date for the 2020 Runyon is September 12th, 2020. As a result of that, we typically have our Hall of Fame in September or October. Doesn't make much sense to have the Runyon and then say 4 weeks later have the Hall of Fame. So we've taken a preliminary look at the calendar, and we think that it makes sense to try to make it through the holidays. And so likely doing something for the Hall of Fame. That says 20, it should say 21. January 8th, maybe January 15th of 2021. It'll still be called the 2020 Hall of Fame Awards, just like the Olympics are still going to be called Tokyo 2020. We're going to do the same thing. But we want to give at least a little bit of space. And we thought about like, well, could you do this in December or like before Thanksgiving? And it just got too crazy. It's always a very busy time anyway. So, and then, just to end things, our fiscal year ends on the 28th of February of 2021. So key dates. The last thing I want to just do as a tradition, this, of course, virtual this time, we remember the club members whom we lost this year. And so I want to acknowledge them. These are all the ones that, I know about. I'm sure there may be others that I missed. If I did, I apologize. Please email me ahead of time. I'll be sure that I note that in the newsletter that I send out next. But, obviously want to acknowledge Walter Boss and all of his generosity with his gift. John Enslin, of course, a lion, a cornerstone of this club, passed away in August. There's just not much to be said. Both of these people were tremendous people to have at this club, and dedicated. John, in particular, dedicated so much of his time to saving this club, to ensuring its survival. And I can't imagine what he's thinking now about where this place is. So. George Lane, a longtime Denver Post editor and poker player, passed away in January of 2019. Irv Moss, we recently lost just a couple months ago in January of 2020. And then Neil Westergaard, the longtime editor of the Denver Business Journal and former executive editor of the Denver Post. So I know not everybody maybe has libations in front of them. If we were at the club, we would, but we'll just cheers to them and thank them for all their support, service, and the memories that we have with them. So cheers.
Yeah.
And with that, that concludes our meeting. We're a little bit over an hour. So at this point, I just want to thank everybody for coming. And if you have any questions, I will open up the chat because I see some folks in here as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask away.
No question, but you guys did a phenomenal job. Congratulations, all of you.
Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Dick.
Are you going to put the this is Kevin, are you going to put the presentation on the website? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I will. I don't quite know how. I'll probably just put it as a PDF. Yeah, just give me a little bit of time to do that. But hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll have it up there.
Good, thank you. This is so unlike meetings in the past, in more ways than one.
Sometimes PowerPoints and Zooms can be effective.
I hope that's a good thing, Kevin.
The financial outlook. It's quite a change. Thanks.
No, we want to ensure, that, look, we're being good stewards of your money. We know, again, how important your membership is. And so, we want to be transparent about that. And again, as Kevin Vaughn noted, if anybody wants to take a deeper look at the detailed budget, we can give that. I don't know if I'll post the full thing online, but yeah, you can take a look at the detailed budget.
Let me add a couple of, one thought here, Dan, if I could.
Sure.
I am proud as hell to be a part of this organization. I've become enamored with it, enamored with many of the members. Since I walked in the door 3 years ago, I've been begging for a retreat that took place in November. It took place. It came together in many ways and in large measure the way I hoped it would. And the thoughts that I have now about the future of this club are tenfold what I thought they would be, say, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So kudos to the entire leadership going back 3 years, and to those that are in place now. I just have great feelings about what we can achieve, and the team in place now, I really think has all the arrows in its quiver that it needs, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks,
other-
Tom, and thanks for your leadership too.
Yes. Yes, we really appreciate it, particularly this time. Lots of, thoughts, ideas on how we can, get through this particularly tough time right now, Tom. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, this is Seth. I just want to congratulate everybody and say what a great job you're doing. And I've attended a lot of board meetings as a board member, and this is the most exciting one I've ever seen. Good job.
There's Netflix and then there's us. And
I don't know if I'd agree with that, but it depends on how you mean excitement.
Thank you, Seth.
I totally agree with Seth. Absolutely.
Other thoughts or questions? All right, everyone. As always, you can find me at president@denverpressclub.org. Tom is at manager@denverpressclub.org. Kevin Vaughn is at treasurer@denverpressclub.org. Again, thanks all for your support. We appreciate it. And we'll be posting a recording of this on the website. Kevin Flynn, we will get the slides up there as well. Just give us some time to put that stuff together. But thanks so much for attending, and we will see you at the club as soon as we can. Thanks, everyone.
Be safe.